I'd rather die drunk, broke at 34 and have people at a dinner table talk about me than live to be rich and sober at 90 and nobody remember who I was.
What's your name?
Andrew Neiman, sir?
So you know I'm looking for players.
Yes, sir.
Then why did you stop playing?
This is why I don't think that we should be together. I'm gonna keep pursuing what I'm pursuing.
Were you rushing or were you drinking?
And because I'm doing that, it's gonna take up more and more of my time, and I'm not gonna be able to spend as much time with you.
Or are you gonna be on my fucking time?
What is your idea of success? Psychology has a term for people who willingly choose suffering in pursuit of meaning. It's not discipline, and it's not passion. Andrew Neiman isn't pursuing drumming, he's chasing greatness.
Because I wanna be great.
And you're not.
I wanna be one of the greats.
In the most psychologically destructive way possible. That's why Whiplash isn't a story about music. It's a case study about identity under pressure, about how an incomplete personality collapses beneath the idea of perfection, which leaves us with one final question. Is greatness worth it when the self is the price?
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Rushing or dragging?
Rushing.
So you do know the difference!
Andrew Neiman is a young man whose identity is not yet finished. And that detail matters more than anything else in Whiplash, because Andrew doesn't know who he is unless he's performing. A psychologically consolidated identity means something simple. You know who you are, even when you fail. You can hold more than one identity at once. An artist, a son, a partner, a human being. Andrew has none of that. At the beginning of the film, his identity is fragile, narrow, externally defined, and unfinished. He is not becoming a drummer. He is trying to use drumming to become someone. And that distinction is the foundation of everything that follows. Andrew, at the start of Whiplash, is almost invisible. He's quiet, socially minimal, emotionally flat. He doesn't assert opinions. He doesn't challenge people. He waits to be noticed, to be chosen, to be validated. Psychologically, this signals low internal authority. Andrew does not experience himself as someone whose presence naturally matters. His value has not formed from within. It is waiting to be assigned from the outside. The only place Andrew feels safe is alone in the practice room. For Andrew, the practice room represents control. The outside world represents threat. Music is the one environment where rules are clear, effort has a direct payoff, and judgment feels measurable. This is why he retreats into repetition, not because he loves it, but because repetition reduces uncertainty, and uncertainty terrifies him. This is why his practice is obsessive, not disciplined. Obsession gives the illusion of certainty to someone who does not yet know who he is. Andrew's relationship with his father deepens this picture. His father is gentle, supportive, emotionally present. On the surface, this seems healthy, but psychologically, it creates a vacuum. There is no challenge, no demand for excellence, no mirror of greatness. Andrew does not rebel against his father. He simply outgrows him emotionally, without replacing him. And when that happens, the psyche begins to search for a stronger authority, a harsher mirror, a more serious judge, someone who can finally tell him whether he matters.
You are a worthless, friendless, faggot-lipped little piece of shit whose mommy left daddy.
That hunger becomes visible at the family dinner. Before Fletcher ever humiliates Andrew, Andrew already believes something dangerous, that prestige equals worth, that recognition equals existence, and that ordinary success equals failure. At the table, he compares himself to athletes. He feels dismissed, small, inferior. This is crucial. Fletcher does not create Andrew's insecurity. He activates it. Because Andrew is not asking, "Do I love music?" He is asking, "Can music make me undeniable?" That is the mindset of someone whose identity is not internally anchored. Psychologically, Fletcher represents two things at once: the father Andrew never challenged, and the self Andrew wants permission to become. A healthy developing artist is curious. Andrew is fear-driven. A healthy identity is plural. Andrew's identity is singular. Failure for a healthy artist is feedback. For Andrew, failure is annihilation. He does not seek mastery. He seeks validation. And above all, Andrew cannot tolerate uncertainty, which is why, when brutality arrives, he does not resist it. He accepts it. Andrew Neiman is not trapped. No door is locked. No one forces him to stay. He stays because the abuse makes sense to him. There is a specific psychological phenomenon at work here: voluntary submission to abuse. It appears in elite athletes, perfectionist artists, and high-control performance environments. The mechanism is simple, but dangerous. When suffering aligns with identity goals, it stops feeling like harm and starts feeling like proof. Andrew doesn't experience Fletcher's cruelty as random. He experiences it as selective. Indifference means you don't matter. Attention, even violent attention, means you might be exceptional. So when Andrew is humiliated, pushed, or broken down, he doesn't ask why this is happening. He asks what it means. Pain becomes a signal. Being screamed at means he's being seen. Being pushed means he's being tested. Being humiliated means he hasn't been dismissed. Suffering turns into evidence that he's closer to greatness than everyone else. Once pain carries meaning, it becomes tolerable, then addictive. This is where discipline ends and obsession begins. Discipline expands the self. Andrew's behavior narrows it. He isolates. He numbs himself emotionally. He damages his body. He removes anything that doesn't serve performance. But he accepts all of it because the suffering supports the story he needs to believe: that greatness requires sacrifice, that kindness produces mediocrity, that comfort is a threat. Fletcher doesn't impose a belief system on Andrew. He confirms one. He gives structure and authority to fears Andrew already carries, that without pressure, he is ordinary, and ordinary means nothing. This is why Andrew doesn't leave. Leaving would mean uncertainty. No clear standard, no guarantee that the pain was worth it, and Andrew cannot tolerate that possibility. So he trades autonomy for certainty. He gives up choice in exchange for an answer to a single question. Am I exceptional? As long as the environment keeps that question alive, he stays. Not because he's forced to, but because his identity depends on it.
Hey, I can cut you any fucking time I want.
You would have cut me by now.
Try me, you fucking weasel!
Fletcher is usually treated as the villain of Whiplash, but psychologically that reading is incomplete. Fletcher doesn't impose a worldview on Andrew, he reflects one. Long before Fletcher humiliates Andrew, Andrew already believes that kindness is dangerous, that comfort weakens people, and that love has no place in greatness. Fletcher doesn't plant these ideas, he gives them a voice. This is why Andrew doesn't rebel. Rebellion requires distance. Andrew doesn't feel distance from Fletcher, he feels recognition. When Fletcher speaks, Andrew hears his own fears articulated with certainty. Abuse only works when it confirms something already believed. If Fletcher's cruelty contradicted Andrew's inner world, Andrew would resist or leave. Instead, the abuse feels coherent. It matches the story Andrew already tells himself about success. This alignment is what makes Fletcher effective. He doesn't need to convince Andrew, he validates him. Every insult feels like honesty. Every humiliation feels like precision. Every demand feels necessary. Fletcher becomes the external authority Andrew has been waiting for. Psychologically, Fletcher functions as a mirror. He reflects Andrew's internal standards back at him, without softness, without ambiguity, without mercy. And Andrew accepts that reflection because it feels more real than kindness ever did. This is why Fletcher's power is so absolute. Not because he controls Andrew, but because he articulates Andrew's deepest belief, that worth must be earned through suffering. And once that belief is confirmed, there is nothing left to fight. Andrew's breakup scene is one of the most clinically revealing moments in Whiplash.
This is why I don't think that we should be together.
Not because it's emotional, but because it isn't. Andrew doesn't end the relationship in anger or fear. He ends it analytically. He intellectualizes the decision, suppresses empathy, and reframes cruelty as necessity. He presents emotional withdrawal as discipline. This is not confidence. This is emotional amputation. Emotional amputation is the deliberate removal of relational needs to protect a fragile identity. Andrew isn't choosing focus over love, he's choosing certainty over unpredictability. Relationships introduce variables Andrew cannot control. They bring emotional demands. They create alternative sources of worth. They expose him to failure outside performance. And most importantly, they remind him that value can exist without achievement. That idea is dangerous to Andrew. As long as his worth depends entirely on performance, his world remains simple. One metric, one direction, one way to matter. A relationship fractures that structure. It demands presence instead of output, connection instead of dominance, vulnerability instead of control. Andrew doesn't reject intimacy because he doesn't feel. He rejects it because he feels too much and can't regulate it, so he removes the threat. He convinces himself that isolation is maturity and that loneliness is the price of greatness. But psychologically, this isn't strength, it's narrowing. Andrew doesn't become more focused, he becomes smaller, more efficient, more brittle, more dependent on a single source of validation. This is the cost of emotional amputation. The self survives, but only in one dimension. And once performance is all that's left, failure becomes catastrophic. The final performance in Whiplash is often described as a victory. Clinically, it isn't. It's a peak, and peaks are not the same as health. In that final moment, Andrew achieves everything he's been chasing. He reaches peak performance. He enters total fusion with the task, and he earns approval from the authority figure who defines value in his world. But psychologically, the cost is visible. Andrew does not leave that stage with autonomy. He does not regain control over his choices. He does not rediscover why he loved music in the first place. What he gains is alignment. What he loses is separation. This state closely resembles flow state addiction. Flow, in healthy contexts, is temporary. It expands the self. In Andrew's case, it replaces the self. The moment becomes the only place he can exist without shame. Outside of performance, there is nothing left to stand on. This is why the ending is often misunderstood. Andrew does not transcend Fletcher, he synchronizes with him. The final look they exchange is not liberation, it's confirmation. Andrew has proven he can survive inside the system, not that he can exist beyond it. If Andrew were a real patient, the short-term outcome would look impressive. High achievement, external praise, emotional numbing disguised as focus. From the outside, it would resemble success. From the inside, it would be fragile. The long-term risks are far more severe. Burnout once the nervous system can no longer sustain intensity. Depressive collapse when validation slows. Identity diffusion when performance plateaus. An inability to tolerate normal human limits without self-contempt. Because when worth only exists at the peak, everything else feels like failure. Without restructuring his self-worth, Andrew's path does not lead to fulfillment. It leads to dependence. Dependence on intensity. Dependence on someone else deciding whether he matters. So the real question at the end of Whiplash is this: is greatness worth it when the self is the price? Psychologically, the answer is clear. Achievement that requires self-erasure is not greatness. It's survival under pressure. And pressure, no matter how productive it looks, is not a foundation a human being can stand on forever.